So, interesting topic today is Amazon Prime. Prime Week was last week, and it was 4 days this time and not 2 days, I believe. And we wanted to ask you about the performance and what you're seeing on some of these bigger accounts.
Yeah, it was quite a slump on the D2C side. Candidly, on Facebook, saw some of the worst performance we've seen all year. Brands that had been growing at a 20 to 30% growth rate year over year, suddenly just flat for the month of July. Number of factors, like I think timeline wise, we had a really strong 4th of July sales with a lot of D2C brands that the ones that really leaned in. So naturally, after those sales, there's generally a consumer slump, which we experienced Monday. And then Prime Day, in my opinion, was kind of the double whammy, where if they're not selling through Amazon and they're not, kind of getting behind a Prime Day sale on their D2C, performance in general was just very poor.
Yeah, I think that's pretty typical. Anybody who is going to buy buys during that big sales season. And then when you have back to back sales seasons, the second one can be a bit of a wash.
Yeah, exactly. And consumer fatigue is like at an all-time high right now. Yesterday and Tuesday were some of the days that we're starting to see our accounts come out of the slump.
So, why is
I,
fatigue, or are there larger variables at play here?
I think it's really like there's a lot of nuance depending on the brand and, what offers they're running. I think in general, the priority goes to a lot of consumer goods, electronic brands, brands that are running pretty deep offers during Amazon Prime Week. Some of the brands we work with actually were running Facebook ads back to their Prime deals,
Interesting.
so not to their D2C store. And then there's some instances I've heard of Amazon giving back rebates on ad credit, or basically rebates on ad spend that you have deployed driving traffic to their platform. I think it's a lot of consumer fatigue in general and looking at certain metrics in the cart, pretty high cart drop off rate. So you might be paying to acquire a visitor to the site. They might add it to cart, but especially during Prime Day, they're going to jump over to Amazon and see if they can get it cheaper and faster. And generally that's the case on Prime Day. So the
Seeing
D2C
cart
sales
drop off a lot
suffer.
higher in the brand's actual e-com store, like in their Shopify store, because people are just going over to Prime.
Yeah, that's what's inferred, right? We don't have any way to necessarily prove that data, but there are correlations between that car drop off rate and sales velocity on Amazon.
Honestly, as a consumer, I'd probably do the same thing. If I saw a deal and I go into the cart, I would just cross-reference on Amazon. I noticed,
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
just the
know if you do
way
this every
people
year, but I
shop.
saw a lot of Amazon Prime Day ads on Meta this year.
Exactly. And if you think about it, who's the platform going to kind of really cater to? It's a lot of those higher spenders. There was a thing about a year ago with Temu and Shein and how they're spending, some of them, some claim was that they're spending up to like $1 billion a day or something insane on Meta. So of course, when it comes to prioritizing the bid pool, who does that inventory go to? That's not something Meta's ever going to be vocal about or upfront about, but you can kind of infer that there's some prioritization that is likely going on just because of the excessive liquidity in their budgets.
And also
That
data,
also makes it
because
very difficult.
I mean, Amazon doesn't have the same privacy laws as Apple does, or the same privacy rules. So I think that that's inherently valuable on its own for Meta, let alone the $1 billion+ in spend.
Exactly. Exactly. So, kind of weather report on the week is pretty cloudy with a lot of thunderstorms. We're testing some different tactics. July is really a testing month for us and most ecom brands where it's really important to kind of lock in what the Q4 strategy is going to be. So we're revisiting everything from, all right, let's give bid caps a run again. Let's give value optimization, TROAS, all the stuff that Meta's been talking about. Let's make sure we give it a thorough test and find out what's going to work on the particular account so that we have a very scalable strategy in Q4 that we can go vertical with and really just focus on doubling down those budgets and exploiting the learning that those campaigns already have on them.
So how do you go about doing that when you're at a sales lull and you're coming off Prime Week? What's the testing strategy look like in July to poise for a strong Q4?
Yeah, it's different for every brand and it depends on their budgets and their spend targets. Obviously, you want to stay within that monthly budget that you're spending towards, but it's important to carve out some of the capital to try new tactics. It depends. A lot of times it looks like scaling down campaigns that are already underperforming that maybe have the lion's share of the account spend, bringing those back to a point where you can reallocate that capital to testing and running a few different cells to kind of land on something that's working. On one account, we typically don't do bid caps or cost caps or any bidding like this, all volume based. So we thought it was a good time to reintroduce cost caps for one of their product lines. See how it reacts in Northbeam. Is it going to get a good ROAS, or we're going to get spend velocity on it? Is the new visitor percentage going to be good? That's something we've been troubleshooting a lot this last 2 months. In all reality, is new visit percentage being down on a number of brands. And that's sort of a leading indicator for that new customer percentage and also their overall acquisition and the health of their brand long term. So with those numbers being down, it's got us going back to the drawing board and, speaking with our meta reps, trying to really analyze what's going on and how we can fix this, kind of repeat traffic that just keeps coming in the door.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty typical for this time of year. I also notice when we were running ads, there's sometimes a correlation between kids being out of school and a new customer percentage being lower because less people are spending time on their phones or in front of their screen, and there's a little more outdoor time going on in the summer. Does that have anything to do with it, or you just think that this year altogether is different
Yeah.
than anything else you've seen?
No, I think anyone who's worked in e-com and D2C for a while knows that summer is a lull. June and July are very slow months. A lot of folks are spending their money on summer holidays or their kids are out of school. There's different priorities. There's not as much shopping going on as there might be in other peak seasons.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, it also makes a good month to test because, if you can kind of crack the code in July and you have enough room leading into October, November that you can, hopefully land on some strategies that work.
So this is the question I've had. How do you go about creative testing in a low month when your next season is a sales season and you can't really test sales creative? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I think it starts with what your sales tactics are in general, where, we've sort of adopted, and this is what I've heard, obviously, and known to be kind of the best formula for sales and getting really granular on kind of your account structure is rather than, you have a sales team, rather than cycling sale creative into a BAU campaign that's been going for a while, you launch a net new campaign for that sales specific creative, and your BAU campaigns just stay business as usual with the creative that's worked with your, maybe you have a few bangers in there that have really driven the majority of sales for that brand that year. So when we approach a big holiday like Black Friday, our testing for those holidays is actually happening as part of a completely different testing strategy than BAU. We do that testing on other holidays like 4th of July, Labor Day, Memorial Day. And those holidays are where we're really trying to fit in our hypothesis and try to land on conclusions that this will be our strategy for Q4. So a good example of that is like for Memorial Day on one brand, we tested higher funnel events. So we tested an add to cart campaign on top of the normal promotion campaign. On some other ones, we're testing reminder ads leading into the sale. And that's actually proven to be really effective for those high scale brands that are experiencing a lot of audience saturation. So that testing occurs in every promo that you're doing leading into Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and then making sure that for that Cyber 5, you're going in with the strategy that worked the best throughout your previous sales during the year. Doesn't really fall on creative. Creative is another, you'll want to kind of test your creative and offers through those other sales periods. But as far as tactics and account structure, that's what we're really trying to learn in all the sales throughout the year.
So
what the audience is
leave the
responding
sale, leave the business as usual campaign untouched. And I noticed that when you do that, it's actually a lot easier to transition out of a sales campaign because you're not having to essentially restructure everything that had discount codes in it. You can just turn off the sale campaign, leave the BAU campaign, maybe scale down budget and just continue on uninterrupted, basically unscathed.
Exactly. That seems to be best practice nowadays too.
Yeah.
We've been doing that for the last 2 years where you don't disrupt BAU, you scale that up and you get your floor of that BAU campaign to a really nice place before the sale so that a 20% increment, 50% increment, those are going to really add up. So, if your floor is only $2K a day, a 20% bump on that's only going to give you an extra $400 on that campaign. But if you can get the floor to that campaign at, $10K a day, you're moving up in, $2,000 to $3,000, $4,000 increments as you scale it, which has a lot more impact.
I see. You can't just go from 2K to a 10K campaign. Everything's going to break. You got to scale it up preemptively. That makes sense.
Yeah, unless you're running cost caps or something that has a lot of data on it for a while and you just want to unlock it, you can do that. But what I find works the best, at least for the brands that we're currently managing, is being softer with the budget adjustments in the sense of ramping it up. The metaphor I like to use is like a kite. When you're flying a kite, that kite can only go as high at a rate of velocity as the wind is blowing, right? So if the wind is really weak, you have to slowly let the string out to work that kite up. But if the wind is blowing, you can let the string out and that kite's going to gain altitude fast. The same with ads, right? If there's a lot of velocity on the sales and really, which is leading to conversion signal coming into the account, you can let those campaigns out really fast. I heard from one disruptor once that the Meta servers update every 2 hours. This is a couple of years ago, so it might be different now. But essentially what he was saying is that you can scale your campaigns. I'm sorry, every hour. You can scale your campaigns to be safe every 2 hours because you're going to put your budget adjustment in, it'll be updated probably within an hour and then get a read on it. Another hour goes by, you can do another budget adjustment. So we found that actually to be tried and true on a lot of accounts for those peak holiday moments. But the larger, we've actually found it's better to just go in on the front end with a large budget on the offer campaign and then have a good floor on your BAU campaigns that maybe you scale, maybe you don't.
That's
So
so
it's,
interesting. There's so many
yeah,
layers of complexity
looking a
here.
lot more preemptively. Yeah, it really depends on what the environment is like at the time.
So when you're scaling every hour, are you setting rules and conditions like based on the past hour's performance, or you go in and manually adjust it?
It depends on the account size. I don't usually use any of Meta's automation or rules just because there's been a lot of glitches with them. I don't trust them.
I've
Yeah.
go forward with the intention you had.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you can't, afford to put that risk. There is some budget scheduling tools we've played with in Meta on the ad set level, which is pretty cool. This is a newer feature, but it allows you to kind of pre-bank spend. So let's say you see a high sales velocity Sunday evenings before the offer closes. Maybe the offer closes Monday. You can go in the previous week or previous day, say, hey, I want to schedule an extra, spend. Like say, I want to schedule an extra 5K of spend in this ad set to happen between the hours of 3 and 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on this one ad set. And it'll basically infuse that ad set with an extra 5K of spend at a peak moment where people are buying. And the other thing is it doesn't affect your daily pacing, which is great. It'll keep that same daily pacing, which is calculating on that 7-day window up to Sundays. It'll keep that same daily pacing, but it'll also say, hey, we also have this extra bucket to spend on Sunday night or Saturday morning or whenever that time period is that you've identified. We've played with that, but we've had some pretty good wins with it. It isn't fully part of our BAU strategy yet, but it's a good tool to kind of pull out of the toolbox if needed.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. Something that I've always been curious about and I find really interesting is the countdown on stories. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if you could find a way to put some money behind that, especially on a sales day? So you can actually keep that live countdown on your story, but just serve it as an ad to other people.
Not that I know of. One thing we're doing is the reminder ads.
Yeah.
It's an engagement objective, which I like because it's a different bidding pool than the conversion objective, right? So increasing your visibility to more people that aren't necessarily in market that second, but could be in market. The way it works is you set up the ad, you put the date of whatever the event is. It could be a sale, it could be a product release. I've used it for live events. We promote some live events in London, and I'll always use reminder ads to build demand for that event. But basically what it is users will opt in to be reminded, and then you can set when that reminder goes out. Usually it's at least one day before the day of the promo in the event, and then either a day after or 15 minutes after or whenever you set it. So it's an engagement campaign and it deploys on Instagram and you're calculating basically cost per reminder. But we did that on one brand. We were seeing soft sales. They run weekend sales a couple times a month. We were seeing soft sales on Saturday for some reason. And the question was like, all right, why are our Saturdays missing forecasts for the last, few sales? We started running reminders ads starting on the Monday before, building into that Saturday, Monday, Tuesday. We started running those reminder ads and instantly, like any campaign or any offer that we ran those reminder ads on, we started hitting our forecasts on Saturday. So essentially we were just kind of preloading some of that promotion spend into reminder ads that would cycle throughout the week so that The users that got those ads or that engaged with those ads are getting that push notification the day of the sale and executing their order.
And this is just a Facebook native reminder ad, right? Facebook, Instagram native. It's not redirecting people off site. It's a push notification to their phone, right?
Exactly. When you set it up in Business Manager, it's under the engagement objective. Then on ad set, you set event reminders.
I'm going to try that one.
It's a good one. It's great for promos. It's great for product releases, especially I think it's great for reaching net new people as well because the bidding pool is different.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you're not paying to get people off site.
It can be a lower CPM for sure.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
That and then higher funnel objectives on promos are something we're testing too. So add to carts, the last couple promotions we've run it for.
Heard of that working
Again,
since like 2019. What brought this back?
I know. I think it's primarily from what Meta would call internally the bidding pool, right? So the available audience for brands to bid on that are in market. So conversion optimized ads only will reach about 20% of the total user base that's available on Meta, right? So essentially what they're saying is like only 20% of the users that are on Instagram and Facebook are actually in market for a product. So those conversion optimized ads have a lower bidding pool, right? So then you're competing against all these other brands. But when you change that to a higher funnel objective, or you start running brand awareness or reach or mid funnel activations, which in this sense is add to cart, like you can kind of get out of that auction of the 20% that everyone's bidding on, and you can start getting in front of other people at a lower cost. At the end of the day, it's just marketing. It's getting in front of the right people at the right cost that are eventually going to convert. I think that's one of the reasons it's working right now. It's not necessarily because the event signal is really great. It's just the signal's good enough to get you in front of the eyeballs that are actually less expensive to reach.
Right. Yeah. In a way, it's telling Meta, look, I don't need the lowest hanging fruit. I want to serve this to as many people as possible, not just the people that are going to buy it right now.
Yeah, exactly. Theoretically, that's kind of the mindset.
And that kind of goes back to our last call about last click and attribution. Because if you're always prioritizing first touch ROAS and you're always bidding on the same 20% pool of people that everybody else is bidding on, probably going to increase CPMs higher, competition's higher, especially around sale events.
Exactly. And especially if you're using, most last click advertisers are using a separate reporting source than Meta. So they're looking at Tableau or Google Analytics, something else, but it's going to really skew your numbers when you're having a period of high demand versus a period of low demand. What happens is in those periods of low demand, you end up scaling back the wrong channels. You scale back the channels that should be creating the demand, creating that wave for the future. And you end up scaling those back because they're not converting on last click because they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're going and building awareness. So like the Meta algorithm, there's a ton of algorithms within it, right? But one of the main ones with ads is it's a search and exploit algorithm, right? It spends capital going out and searching for the right audience, and it also spends money exploiting and converting that audience. So it's constantly oscillating between this search mechanism, this exploit mechanism, this search mechanism, this exploit mechanism. So what happens with last click advertisers is they're just focused on the exploit, make sure it's converting because that's what actually gets the credit. But you need to make sure that those campaigns have enough budget and liquidity and time to go and do what they're supposed to do, which is both search and exploit. So that's a core fundamental that a lot of last click advertisers tend to neglect because it's almost like fishing again. You know, you're packed up for the day, you've chartered the boat, you've got all your buddies with you, you've paid all this money for bait and tackle and gas, and you kind of have this choice. It's like, all right, do we spend like the first 4 hours of the day going out to where the big tuna are? Or at least we think the big tuna are, right? Or do we only go out 2 hours where we know there's more tuna or there's more likely tuna there, but we're not going to catch the big ones? It's kind of that risk that you have to take. Well, you have to spend the gas money to go reach the people that you're wanting to go reach. You need to have the resources to get out to that depth where you can actually catch the big fish. So that's where it's like the bigger advertisers have to plan ahead and be able to forecast that spend cycle to be able to really both reach and find the audience they're looking for, but then also convert them and exploit them.
Those are such good analogies. And the thing I notice every time we talk, we keep coming back to this concept of liquidity. And this is the thing I think a lot of smaller brands miss is they're looking at like cash in the bank or they're looking at revenue, but they're not thinking of their capital as a tool to deploy to bring in more revenue.
Yeah.
And it's easy to hear that analogy and say, oh, yeah, I want the big tuna. But it's a psychological game to say, okay, well, I'm going to spend an extra 20K a day for the next 7 days in the hopes that I'm going to get to these big fish, but there's no guarantee. I don't really know if it's going to work. And you're kind of just putting your blind faith into the algorithm, fit of
Mhm.
seeing it on so many accounts. But as a brand owner, I see the fear of not knowing if that's going to bring the return. And when you're always focused on that
Yeah,
last click and on the attribution, it's so tough to justify spend in areas where it's not direct, it's not immediate.
for sure. And that's why as a brand owner, it comes down to the captain that you choose, right? Like if I'm going to go out and get the big tuna, I want to make sure that that captain has been out there 1,000 times before, knows where those tuna swims, knows how to read his instruments, knows the weather patterns and can get us back if the tuna aren't there.
Sure.
That's where hiring seasoned advertisers really is essential to that. And that's where it lends itself well to the metaphor with financial managers and equity managers. It's like, I don't want some kid in his basement that's just figuring out how to do day trading with YouTube. Like, I want somebody who's managing millions of dollars in capital, that's seen the patterns, that's experienced the storm, so to say, and knows how to navigate us to where the fish
Yeah.
are.
And someone who has Bloomberg Terminal knows how to use it and uses it every day on thousands of accounts and hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah.
Exactly. And as a brand owner, that mitigates your risk. That gives you a better opportunity for success.
This is kind of it reminds me a little bit of something Alex Hormozy says a lot, which is you can pay 20% more and get someone that's 10 times better. So like the cost to go from a B level player that'll charge you whatever, $4,000 or an A level player that might charge you $6,000, the cost difference is minimal,
Exactly. I think it's always better to invest in value
especially when it
than
comes
try
to
to
this. I
get
mean,
the
you're
cheaper
trusting
option.
someone with
Yeah.
millions and millions of dollars in ad spend. You got to have the right player behind you.
Exactly. I think for brands to get to a point where they have millions of dollars to deploy, they've made a lot of good decisions leading up to that point that puts them in a position to statistically find somebody that's going to be good and make the decision on who they hire as their media buying team, because you don't get there unless you've already had a number of good decisions and probably hires before that that have gotten you to that place to be able to deploy that kind of
Yeah,
capital.
yeah. So you don't get there by accident. You get there with a lot of effort and strategy.
Yeah,
So I'll go back
exactly.
to the sales cycle conversation because this Prime Week was 4 days, right? And I know
Hmm.
that we previously talked about the length of sales cycles and how on last Black Friday, Cyber Monday cycles, people were teeing up their campaigns 2 weeks in advance. You saw a bit of a lull on this 4 day Prime Week. How do you think this looks coming into Q4 and the duration of this sale period?
That's a great question. What's interesting is looking at the stats from Amazon is order volume actually went up 100%. So they added 2 extra days. Their order volume was up 99%. So it was 2.83 million in 2004. It was 5.63 in 2005. However, their net revenue actually only increased by 29%. So 100% increase in order volume, 30% increase in actual net revenue.
Is it your higher discount percentages or how do you equate that?
Yeah, so actually lower discount percentages this year, 50% lower discounting this year. Their average order value dropped a lot, like a 35% drop in average order value. Brands pulled back on promos. And then, it was obvious that like a lot of brands had, their margin protection was probably their highest priority, seeing the drop in discounts year over year. Meanwhile, like shipping discounts increased, and even this year, like the spend from advertisers was less than previous year. So
That's really interesting.
yeah, it's
Double the order
interesting.
volume, 29% higher revenue and lower 54% less discounts given. So
Yeah.
it's got to come down to the product then.
I
Cost products. I mean,
yeah,
are people just spending less money on big ticket items?
maybe it's different products year over year. Yeah, I'd be curious to look into like how that skewed this year versus last year, and what people were buying and what kind of prime deals they were capturing.
Well, this will be an interesting conversation as the months go on and as you're doing more creative testing in July and figuring out how to structure these campaigns for the big Black Friday this year.
Yeah, exactly. Looking at Black Friday, Cyber Monday, there's a lot of ways to kind of forecast how it's going to go based on how your acquisition has looked early in the year. Has your new customer percentage been strong? Has your new visit percentage been strong? Your email opt-ins, like, are all the marketing activations to this point, and even for the rest of this quarter, are those strong and healthy? It's pretty safe to say that you're going to be able to maximize Cyber 5 because, we have one brand that we're expecting very strong Cyber 5 because of all of the leading indicators of new visits, new customer percentage, cost per new visit down, email opt-ins up, CRM revenue up, all of the things that are supposed to compound to that Cyber 5 week. And that's really what it's about. It's about incremental wins, small wins that'll eventually compound on bigger home runs on days like Black Friday.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you can kind of predict this over the previous 12 months. You can see this forecast on how it's going to go.
Yeah. For the most part, you can get close at least and plan your media spend.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Around
these
that.
will be interesting conversations as the weeks go on.
They're already building for iOS 26 and working with engineers at the ad platforms for that, because what's going to happen is Click ID is going to get stripped in the next iOS rollout, which can create this iOS 14.5 scenario all over again. So brands have to adjust their measurement to honestly be less click dependent, which means you have to learn how to do increment. You need to learn how to really become an expert of the three legs of the measurement stool, click-based, view-based, and platform-based, I guess. Super interesting to see where the future is going to be for performance marketing, because AI can do a lot, but there's a measurement gap that a lot of performance marketers aren't able to really fill or piece together, and brand owners at that.
So what do you attribute
Yeah.
this? Is this just like data privacy laws and we can't see as much of what's going on? Or is it more just consumer psychology and like marketing has changed and you're measuring social ads more like you used to measure TV ads before social existed? Is it just adoption? Like, why the big change?
I think privacy laws have kind of forced this new era of measurement and understanding incrementality. User behaviors changed, which is linked to platform fundamentals changing, going from being a social network that you connected with your friends and then maybe you saw an ad for something you like and you buy it, to social attainment. Like, let's just doom scroll and, if I like something, I don't go and click through. The reason is, and I said this when TikTok first came out, is like, TikTok is literally like a drug, right? It's like, all right, they made this app that's a drug, cool, but good luck selling something to somebody that is distracted doing their drug. They're not going to leave your platform and go pull out their credit card and experience all this resistance and pain of trying to buy a product. Even if you put the product in the platform and make it easy, it still is like, no, they're there because they want to be entertained, and you've triggered their dopamine loop to keep them there. So now you're trying to break that dopamine loop to get them to buy something. The two are juxtaposed,
Yeah.
So what happened is, like, TikTok did that. Then Meta's like, all right, we're losing all of our, and this is me just theorizing, losing all of our user base to TikTok. So we need to do that too. So they build reels and they optimize their algorithm. So now it's like, great. Now the one thing that did work is like social is gone, because like no one's going to Instagram to, like, maybe you engage with maybe a couple friends every time you open the Instagram app, but that dopamine, thing in your brain, instantly, before you know it, you're on reels and you're just scrolling. Like, you went there to see what's everybody up to today, and then within 3 clicks, you're already in a scroll loop. It's really hard to sell products with click-based attribution in that ecosystem and environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, one of the things that made Facebook stand out from TikTok early on was the placement diversification. It was the fact that, like, you had these different styles of placement. You had catalogs, you had shops, you had stories, you had, maybe a little time on reels, but you had the feed, you had the desktop, you had the right. And there was this attribution architecture that was built around the user profile for a certain product, and they could maximize that. But what's happened is the users just get sucked into this loop that makes it really hard to convert. And then that audience pool, that bid pool, just gets smaller and smaller of the people that are in market. And then you look at Gen Z and how they're actually buying products. They're not like clicking through, they're just screenshotting it, going to Google, looking it up, or they're screenshotting it, going to ChatGPT, uploading the screenshot, boom, 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 ChatGPT does this thing. And then, maybe they click through a ChatGPT link, or maybe they were recommended another product that's similar, or they read a review. It's just like completely different shopping behavior now. So I feel like the future is really in performance marketers learning how to adopt and scale their EQ a little bit and over the audience through emotion and making ads that are sticky and memorable and going to leave a lasting impact. And then I think the other thing I'm seeing too is the cross-device marketing and YouTube. Millennials, like, we don't have cable, but we put YouTube on every single day. The amount of ads that are on YouTube now is unreal. It's more than television. And YouTube, I'm not saying YouTube ads are great, but I think there's still untapped opportunity there that a lot of brands, performance marketers and brands aren't tapping into, because that's where the eyeballs are right now.
Right. It's just a change of attention. It's a shift in how people consume entertainment, and it's a change in privacy. And I think new tech like AI has completely changed consumer behavior, especially for people that are now becoming consumers, like Gen Zs, someone like me, and I'm an old guy in my 30s. It's even changed the way that I do these regular things and the way that I shop. So I can only imagine what it does for younger generations,
Yeah, I want to know more on how they shop.
how they get influenced, how they think about things, what's their perception on social media.
What's interesting is this kind of a different topic, but there's certain niches. So like I'm hearing that like the anime niche, right, is one, it's massive, but that's what's actually become cool with the Gen Z audience. I have a friend, he works at a massive brand owned by LVMH, or now as a agency partner with them. And long story short, he was telling me about this deep dive he was doing for a brand partnership that, you would hear about this brand partnership and you're like, this does not make sense. But he started unpacking the statistics. And one of the things he said was like, did you know that like over 50% of the content consumed on Netflix is anime? Like 50%.
I would never have guessed
Like
that. That's a ton.
massive. And you think about it, you're like, wait, where is that? And it's not just all in Asia. It's like US, like 50%. And apparently with the Gen Z, where our generation, anime was kind of this alt nerdy cosplay like thing, but that's what's cool now in the Gen Z audience. Where our generation, it was like gangster rap, hip hop, like that was the thing. Now it's like that crowd, it's this anime niche that's massive. And then you think about it, you're like, oh yeah, all the Twitch streamers and all of the online gamers and all the people that are sitting there spending time online, it makes sense. But if you talk to an old, legacy brand that maybe they're owned by a larger corporation, or you talk to one of these old legacy brands and try to pitch them on that to reach the younger generation, there's no paradigm or context for it. And it made me realize, wait a minute, we're probably really disconnected with what's actually going on.
Mm-hmm.
Here we sit in this seat of consultants and we're advising these brands, but still there's this thing happening with the Gen Z that performance marketers, brand owners, anyone that's trying to stay relevant has to be in touch with that. And it's going to often be juxtaposed with what our underlying belief is about that niche or genre, because we were influenced in a different way when we were that age.
Yeah. This is probably one of the few limitations of being in the game for so long, is that you can rely on your old knowledge, which can be super outdated.
Exactly. It's like the sample size of one kind of.
Yeah. Do a
I
whole
had no
conversation
idea.
on that alone.
Yeah. We had a client that crushed it with like literally one of the largest, fastest growing YouTube channels, competed with Mr. Beast, and they sell anime themed katana swords. And if you look at the other katana brands, like there was no good e-commerce sites for these katana swords. So all it took is like someone with an idea, identify a niche, build really good content around it, and it's massive.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. I have definitely seen that before.
Yeah. They're a great brand, great operator, thought leader on Twitter,
Yeah. More about that next time, about just the changing psychology, changing consumer demographics, and what it takes to actually reach the younger generation now.
For sure.
Awesome.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks everybody for joining.